In 1861, the United States shattered from within, turning its strength against itself in the bloodiest war it would ever face, the U.S. Civil War. During this war, cities would be reduced to rubble, farmlands burned, and families torn apart. Over 620,000 lives were lost, leaving behind a nation scarred by grief and destruction. But this brutal conflict was not without purpose. It ended slavery, tested the very survival of the Union, and carved a new path for the future. What was the Civil War? The U.S. Civil War, fought from 1861 to 1865, was a violent conflict in which Americans were fighting Americans. The country split in two. The northern states, the Union, clashed with the southern states, the Confederacy, who had decided to break away from the United States and form their own nation. The Civil War occurred due to a mix of political, economic, and social tensions. Slavery, the nation's deepest wound, was a central cause of the Civil War. The Southern economy depended on enslaved people to grow and harvest cotton, the most profitable crop of the era. In contrast, many in the North viewed slavery as morally wrong and wanted it abolished. Every new state or territory added to the country sparked fierce debates. Would it allow slavery or not? These battles over human freedom tore at the fabric of the nation and increased division. The second cause was the question over states' rights. Southern leaders believed their states had the right to make their own laws, even if those laws supported slavery. They feared a strong federal government might one day outlaw slavery completely. To them, the Union was a voluntary agreement that they could leave if it no longer served their interests. The North, however, believed the United States was a single, unbreakable nation. This disagreement over state versus federal power became a major flashpoint. Economic differences between the North and South was a third cause of the war. The North and South might have been part of the same country, but economically, they lived in two different worlds. The North was bustling with factories, railroads, and industry, while the South relied on vast plantations and enslaved labor. The North supported tariffs, taxes on imported goods, to protect its growing industries, but the South hated tariffs because they raised prices and hurt trade with Europe. These clashing economic interests added fuel to the fire. Fourthly, a failure to compromise. For decades, American leaders tried to hold the country together with political compromises. The Missouri Compromise, the Compromise of 1850, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act all aimed to balance the power between free and slave states. But each deal left both sides more bitter than before. Instead of solving the problems, these compromises just pushed them further down the road, until there was no road left. Fifthly, escalating tensions and outbreaks of violence pushed the nation closer to the brink of war. Long before the first cannon was fired, the nation was already bleeding. Between 1854 and 1859, in the Kansas Territory, there were a series of violent confrontations between pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers. These deadly skirmishes, known as Bleeding Kansas, were over whether the new territory would allow slavery. Also, in 1857, the Supreme Courts made the Dred Scott decision. They ruled that enslaved people were property, not citizens. The decision outraged abolitionists and inflamed Northern anger. Then, in October of 1859, came John Brown's bold and violent raid on a federal armory at Harper's Ferry. His aim was to spark a slave uprising in the South. For the South, the raid increased fears of slave rebellions and a need to act. Cause 6. The election of Abraham Lincoln. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected president, without winning a single Southern state. Southerners saw this as a direct threat to their way of life. Although Lincoln said he wouldn't interfere with slavery where it already existed, he was firmly against letting it spread to new territories. His election shattered the fragile balance between North and South. The final contributing factor of the Civil War was the secession of Southern states and their creation of a new nation. Southern leaders believed the new president, Lincoln, and the growing anti-slavery movement would soon threaten their economy, their culture, and their way of life, especially the institution of slavery. Within weeks, 7 Southern states decided to secede from the Union. In early 1861, they created the Confederate States of America, with their own president, Jefferson Davis, and their own constitution. In the months that followed, 5 more Southern states threw in their lot with the secessionists, swelling the ranks of the Confederacy to 11 states. After the South declared its own nation, tensions grew, as both sides waited for the other to make a move. Nowhere were those tensions higher than at Fort Sumter. The fort, sitting in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, deep in the heart of the South, was occupied by Union soldiers holding out in Confederacy's territory. To the south, the fort was an unwanted foreign presence. To the north, abandoning would mean surrendering the Union. The standoff ended when Confederate forces opened fire on Fort Sumter on April 12, 1861, officially starting the Civil War. In conclusion, the Civil War was more than just a clash of armies. It was a battle over the very soul of the United States. It was born from decades of tension, injustice, and deep-rooted division, with slavery at the heart of it all. And though the war would leave behind unimaginable destruction and loss, it would also bring about a rebirth, ending slavery, preserving the Union, and redefining the meaning of freedom.